You're welcome to the Making of Me podcast, where we explore the defining questions, turning points, and discovery that shape us into who we have become today. Today, I'm joined by Doug Ell, MT graduate, former atheist attorney, and author, known for his work reconciling science and faith through evidence-based reasoning. Doug, it's a pleasure having you on the show.
I'm delighted to be here. Really nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank
It's
you, Doug.
amazing we can talk over this technology from the United States to Nigeria, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah, it's really amazing. Yes, Doug, what were some of the challenges that shape you into who you are today?
Oh boy, that's a hard question. You don't have a long enough show for that, but I'll give you the short version. I grew up a really nerdy kid. I don't know if you're familiar with that word, but I was very much into my own head, math and science. And when
Hmm.
I got to high school, I read that life could have started in a dirty pond. That's in a lot of high school books in the US. Nonsense. Anyhow, I thought you didn't need God. And I turned away
Hmm.
from God when I was a teenager because I thought it was contrary to science. And I've really found that a lot of people believe that same nonsense too. So when I came to faith, and that's another story I could get into if you want, but I told myself I had to reconcile science and God. As you mentioned, I graduated from MIT. I double majored in math and physics. I graduated early. When it comes to math stuff, I'm pretty smart. Human
Good.
stuff, maybe not. And then I've spent 30, 40 years learning about different parts of science. And what I found is that true science really supports the Bible from the beginning to the end.
Hmm.
And there is no reason any Christian should be afraid of science.
Yeah.
Science is rational. What we found out about the wonders of the universe, and it's just totally supports every bit of the Bible. And so I've made it my mission now that I'm retired as a lawyer to try to just help people overcome those doubts because I know that when I turned away from God because I thought it was against science, a lot of joy went out of my life.
Hmm.
I lost a lot of joy, and I don't want that to happen to other people. Or if it's happened, I want to help restore the joy of connecting with God. That's why, I'm really delighted to be on your show. I hope
Oh,
that answered.
yeah, it does perfectly. Thank you so much, and thank you for what you do. Um,
Well, I had a perception that science was contrary to God. It seemed like the smart money was on that was against God. There's these nonsense theories which aren't the least bit scientific or proven that you can get something from nothing. You can't, obviously. I mean, only God can create, and that's a fact of physics. One of the fundamental laws of physics is that you can't create matter and energy. So, but I thought science was contrary to God. I think this thing that I read in high school that life started in a dirty pond, which a
yeah,
lot of people believe. I mean, it is one of the stupidest unscientific claims ever made, but I mean, I have found professors at the top universities who are so stuck on this nonsense. I mean, I have to feel sorry for these people. They are giants in their field at the very best American universities, MIT, Harvard, and so on. And they can't realize their blindness to the truth. But I thought, again, if life started in a dirty pond, you don't need God. And that is so much not true science.
yeah, amazing, amazing. So you actually spend decades studying the relationship between science and God. What surprised you the most during that journey?
Just how all the evidence. I feel that God has helped me understand the evidence because I prayed about this. I've asked God, tell me. And every week I see new evidence. I've got a blog on my website that I try and report some of this to people on. But I found the mathematical wonder in the universe, these mathematics, but just the impossibility of getting human beings, well, any kind of life, but then human beings by chance. This idea that nature can't design, that's been proven scientifically. This Darwin stuff is very horrible, one of the worst frauds ever perpetuated in the name of science. And, that's a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
There's just so much,
Yeah.
so
So
much.
true.
We could get into dozens of subjects about the wonder of science and how it shows the existence of God. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. So, how did your legal training, weighing argument and evidence, influence how you approach spiritual questions?
Yeah, well, in my career as a lawyer, I learned to evaluate arguments. What's the best argument? Because a lawyer's supposed to make the best argument. What I found is a lot of people who aren't trained like that, they'll give you arguments, but they don't start with their best arguments. And sometimes they don't really examine all the pros and cons like a lawyer would. A lawyer's trained to try to look at things from the other side. What's the other side going to argue? And so it's really helped me assess the arguments and try and sort through this nonsense that science is contrary to God. I think it's helped me think a little bit clearer about the arguments.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. So you often talk about science evidence that pointing towards design. What are some examples that stand out to you?
Sure. Let me, people know this stuff. A lot of people do, but they don't really think about how wondrous it is. 70 plus years ago, almost 75 years ago, people discovered that all of life runs on a digital code. Let me explain that a little bit. So the digital code is called DNA. Everybody
Yeah.
pretty much is familiar with DNA. You hear these phrases, it's in my DNA. So DNA is code, okay? It's like computer code, only it's much more advanced. And this isn't just me saying this. This is a man called Bill Gates who founded Microsoft and is one of the top coders ever built. Okay, he said that. So DNA, so writing is a digital code. A digital code is just a code that comes in discrete bits. Writing has 26 letters in the English language.
Yeah.
That's the only language I speak, I'm sorry. But, all writing comes down to different characters, whatever language, and spaces and things like that. That's how you write. We are talking through the miracle of modern technology, which is computers which are based on digital code. Okay. Our computers are talking to each other with millions of bits of code. Well, human beings and all life runs on digital code. That is fantastic. Just think about that. Okay. And it is the most advanced code in the universe. And so now let's go back to my example, if I could, about this nonsense about how did life get started? Was it in a dirty pond? Okay. So to have life, you have to have the code in the right order. What are the chances do you ever play cards? Do you have a card deck? 52 cards.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are the chances you're going to accidentally get those cards in the right order? If you shuffle them up, and so you picked a particular order and you say, I'm going to keep shuffling the cards until I get them in the right order. Well, you would never get them in the right order in your life. Okay.
Yeah.
And if everybody on Earth did that, I don't know the exact number, but it's not likely anybody on Earth would ever get the cards in the right order.
Yeah.
So
true.
now imagine thousands of, letters, millions of letters, all exactly in the right order to start with. Then you have to have machines that can copy that code because life's got to reproduce, right? So you got to be able to hand the code on to the next organism. For human beings, our children. You've got to be able to read the code, so you got to copy it. These are incredible machines in all life, by the way. You've got to be able to use the code to print out parts. You familiar with the concept of a 3D printer? It's called, you put in code and it can print out a hammer or whatever, or the type of, our bodies, all life has 3D printers in it that reads our DNA and it prints out a part, which is called a protein. The section of the code that's used to print out the part is called a gene. Everybody's heard that word, gene.
Yeah.
So you got to start with all this. You got to have the code in the right order. You got to be able to copy the code. You got to be able to read the code. You got to be able to print out sections of the code. This is all life, not just human beings. And you have to you need so much more. I mean, you need sources of power sources which exist in all life and so on to run all this equipment. And, in 1964, there was Yale's a big university in the United States. There was a Yale physicist calculated the odds of life arising by chance, randomly, were one in a number with 100 billion zeros. So in the United States, we have this lottery or thing where your chances are 1 in a billion, roughly. So that's like the odds of winning this impossible lottery 10 billion times in a row. So, I mean, what do you think of that? How did life get started if not God? And again, the blindness of our society is on this. This is an obvious point. Accepted science. I'm not doing anything
Yeah.
too fancy here, it's some people aren't open to the evidence. It's there, and there's so much more.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for your explanation. I think it just speaks volumes to the fact that there's a whole lot of code when it comes to looking at the DNA and even the fact that because sometimes it usually amazes me when they talk about DNA and the fact that when you give birth, there's a trace of it to show that the father and the mother they're actually more like they're actually the owner of the child and yeah, a whole lot of different things. And what is the odd that they actually were like it was exact, it was not a misplaced priority and having another different person's DNA. I think this just speaks volume and it's really amazing. So skeptic often ask, who created God? How did you approach that question thoughtfully?
I love that question. I've gotten that question when I talk. So let's break down that question. In our universe, things are created, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of something happens first and then something happens second. So two events are separated by time, right? And we say that the first one created or led to the second. So now here's the thing, and this is mind blowing, but God does not exist in time. God is outside of time. God created time. And how anybody could create time, there's no scientific clue on that. But so this great scientist Albert Einstein told us that time and space are connected. Okay, this is a formula called general relativity, incredible mathematics. So God created time, space, and matter. It's all actually connected in amazing ways. And God is outside of all that. So think of, you've seen fish in a fishbowl, right? So,
Yeah.
So the fish, imagine you're a fish in a fishbowl. And now maybe you can get some sense of what's outside your fishbowl, right? Maybe there's light coming in or something. And if you're a smart fish, you probably figure out that the stuff outside the fishbowl is like what's in your fishbowl. To some extent, it's different. But now here's the truth. We're in a fishbowl. We're in a really big fishbowl. It's called the universe. But there's stuff, God is outside that fishbowl. He's outside of our space, our time. He created it all. So we don't know what's outside the fishbowl, but we know that the time we have, this A led to B, isn't true outside the fishbowl. And by the way, there's an experiment in physics that shows that items can be connected outside of space and time. That's called quantum entanglement. It's just amazing. But God is outside the fishbowl. God does not exist in time. He can enter time, as he did with Jesus and many other cases, okay? But God exists outside of time. Now, we don't know what's outside our fishbowl other than what God wants to tell us. So when you say, when God created time, you can't ask who created God because it's outside the fishbowl. There is so much mystery in it, but there's something out there. We know that. We know we live in the equivalent of a fishbowl, and you have to be open to the wonder. So God is not in our space and time. He can enter it, but he exists outside it. Does that help?
Yeah, it really helped. Yeah, God created time, but he lives outside time. And that was really amazing. So though for someone scientifically trained who struggle with faith, how should they begin examining the question honestly?
someone who's struggling with faith. Well, people struggle with faith for lots of different reasons. The hard question, and I'm going to quote a very famous, well, a well-known English mathematician who's alive today. I've met him, John Lennox. The hard question really isn't science and God. That's an easy question if you can open your eyes. The hard question is God and suffering. Okay. And to that, because there's a lot of suffering out there, there's a lot of evil, and we're all fighting battles inside. So it depends what you're struggling with on your faith. If you're struggling because you're suffering, the only true answer to that is well, there's a couple answers, but you got to keep in mind that Jesus came down and suffered with us. Okay? So
Yeah.
God doesn't sit aloof and just ignore human suffering. He came down and suffered with us. So, we all come from two human beings, Adam and Eve. That's another thing that science has shown when you look at the
Yeah.
science of DNA, that all humanity comes from, we're all distant cousins. We look different sometimes,
Yeah.
we act different, whatever. We're all basically the same. And that's modern science too, not just the Bible. And the Bible says we suffer because the first human beings didn't trust God.
Yeah.
They wanted to be like God, and I believe that story's true. That's why you suffer. People don't like that answer, but I'm getting a little off your track of what your
Yeah.
question was. What I wander in my talk. Will you forgive me sometimes? But it depends. To bring people to faith, what's holding you back? And if it's science, then there's so much on that can restore your faith. And if it's suffering, then just remember Jesus suffered too. Pray, go to church, read the Bible.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. Looking back now, how has reconciling science and faith changed your sense of meaning and purpose in your life?
It's brought the joy back.
Mm.
I don't know if you know. There's something in the Bible. I think it says, "All hearts are restless until they rest in Thee." You heard that? That's one of my favorite phrases because it's so true. People are so messed up. Here in the U.S., we're very blessed in a lot of ways, but it makes people pursue the wrong stuff. It's not a game of how, he who dies with the most toys win. It's not a game of money or being famous or anything like that. The real joy doesn't come from that stuff. It comes from God. So I feel my faith is getting deeper all the time. I pray to God also for faith. If you want to pray for something, I recommend everybody pray for more faith, to trust God. And so what I've done has helped me tremendously in my journey to faith.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. And this is really amazing, especially the scripture you just quoted. All hearts are restless until they rest. Yeah, in God. It's really amazing. So, Doug, for my audience who are more curious about this topic, who would love to reach out and who would love to connect with you and who would love to read more of your work, how can they reach out and where is the best platform?
Sure. I have a website. It's the title of my first book, and it's countingtogod.com. Okay. Which is an allusion to my mathematical nerdy nature.
Yeah.
I think you can get logically to God. So I titled it countingtogod.com. And if you go to that website, you can sign up for my blog, which obviously is free. I don't make any money out of doing this. I lose money. But I've written four books, and I'm particularly proud of my latest. It's something called a graphic novel. Are you familiar with that term, graphic novel?
Not me. I'll have to check it.
Okay, well, are you familiar with the term comic book?
Comic, yes.
Yeah. Well, a graphic novel's like a big comic. It's got pictures. All right. And I did this because a lot of the younger generation like these kind of books. They're easier to read. And so I've got a graphic novel, which I think is really changing the lives of young children because it breaks down the science very simple. But you can get a link to that book, The God Proofs. The people who illustrated that book are geniuses, and they've created some animations, little movies based on parts of the book that you can link to. It's on a website called thegodproofs.com. And you can reach out to me there. You can read my blog posts. And you can watch the video of when I lectured at MIT on science and God. So go to my website, countingtogod.com.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for sharing your journey and your thoughtful perspective on science and faith. This has really been deep and eye-opening conversation. And to our listener, you can explore more of the LIS through the link that is going to be on the show notes. Yeah, thank you for listening to the Making of Me podcast. Once again, it's really an honor to actually have you on the show.
Well, it's an honor to be on your show, and God bless you and all you do.